Hey everybody, welcome back to Visual Novel Book Club. I'm your pal Slowbeef. With me, of course, my good friend Jim.
Hey everybody.
My good friend Rosella 500.
Hello.
My good friend Pula Hoko.
Hey.
My good friend Oren Ronan.
Good evening.
That's it, unfortunately. We had to reschedule due to unforeseen events, and unfortunately Turbo couldn't make it, but told us we had to continue on in their stead.
The mystery of the missing member.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, well, fine. I thought it was a kid's game, but no, I guess not. Well, so we're on to chapter 2 of The Great Ace Attorney. Does anybody want to start us off? Like, how does this? I have notes, but how does this thing open up?
So, do we want to? It actually opens with kind of like a voiceover of Dr. Watson telling the end of a Sherlock Holmes story.
Mm-hmm.
A real Sherlock Holmes story. Jim, you said that you're a Sherlock Holmes fan.
Sure. I could sort of set this up because it does become really plot relevant and cool in a few places, in interesting ways. So basically, The Adventure of the Speckled Band is an early Sherlock Holmes story. One of the it was published in a combined form if you find it now in The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, but it was originally published in a magazine called The Strand.
And I read it for this, and it's not a good story. I mean, I read it as a kid too, but I forgot what was in it.
It's good for establishing mood, but it's very flawed. And so what happens is a young woman visits Sherlock Holmes. She says that she is her mother died and she lives with her stepfather. Her sister died a few years ago, and under suspicious circumstances. Her stepfather is fairly abusive. He is very controlling. Her sister was about to get married and died, and her last words in her bedroom when her sister finds her is the speckled band, which she never understood why.
And she also complained about hearing some whistling noise.
Whistling. Yep. Repeatedly, yep, before, and then it would happen a lot.
Also, her stepfather's name is Roy Lott Grimsby.
Yes, it is. We'll hear this character name again in the chapter, and to make a long story short, what ends up happening is the angry stepfather actually visits Sherlock Holmes and threatens him, but despite that, he goes and investigates. Him and Watson hide out in the bedroom of the young woman's bedroom, because what has happened is she's been forced to sleep in her sister's old bedroom. They're adjoining to the stepfather's bedroom, and there's a ventilator between. There's also a bell cord that doesn't do anything tied to tied right next to the ventilator, and there's a bed that's bolted to the floor right next to that. Holmes and Watson spend the night there, and eventually in the middle of the night they hear a slithering sound. Holmes pops up, Watson unleashes a light, they beat back at something, and it turns out it's a snake. The snake goes back through the ventilator shaft and, agitated, bites the stepfather, who turns out has sent the snake through. The way he has done this is that because the woman was about to get married, and it was going to cost him the mother's fortune. So what he did, the way he killed his sister and the way he was trying to kill her, was he had trained a snake with milk to go in, crawl down the bell pull, jump onto the bed, and eventually, when she had woken up, would be bitten by the snake. When it was unsuccessful, it would happen every night, and every night it's unsuccessful, he would whistle to get the snake back. We'll get to the part of why none of that makes any sense. But that's essentially how the mystery is solved. They figure out that Holmes figures out that it's a snake that's being trained by the stepfather. So that's the premise that you need to know going into this before we actually get into the Ace Attorney version of the Speckled Band.
You don't need to know, but I think it enhances the actual chapter.
Oh, it definitely does. Yeah,
I think it's super appropriate to talk about it on this podcast, but when we say we open on that too, we're open on like a sepia sort of like not written, but like illustrated almost version of Sherlock Holmes, or somebody's telling that story, right? More or less, but in like a very short version and with like very few of the details, but about like an adder and a band and etc., right?
Yeah, it has the like it's written as if it were like a diary entry of sort of the climax of that story, where they're hidden in this dark room and they see or hear the snake and finally realize, oh, it's the speckled band. And that's what we see at the beginning.
Yeah, it's written like an actual Sherlock Holmes story, which are all written from John Watson's point of view.
Gotcha. That's Dr. Watson, I think.
Yeah, he's the so-called writer of these stories.
Yeah.
But then we're after that. So we're in the cabin of a ship, right? And there's a body. And this part's like animated, you know, in the anime style, you could say. But here, there's like a body with what you've probably seen this before, like the body's finger is like ink on it, and there's a phrase they were like pretty much finished writing, but in Russian, a Russian word, or I guess a word with Cyrillic, but one of those things you can kind of like suss out even if you don't know Russian. What happens is Sherlock Holmes is, a detective who you would probably assume is Sherlock Holmes is here, but he looks kind of amazing. He has these goggles on over like kind of like the typical cap. I don't know what you'd call it that Sherlock Holmes usually wears, you know?
The deer stalker.
Yeah. Yeah, and they've got like they're not like clubs, like card clubs, but like they're like almost like 4 circles, like a clover shamrock kind of sign on each of them, and they're sort of glowing. And he has a gun, like it's a revolver, but he like puts vials of things in it, and when it shoots it, he creates smoke for like kind of like a CSI-ish sort of effect, you know?
No, it's steampunk Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, it's anime steampunk Sherlock Holmes.
It's great.
Yes. It is great. And he's talking to some Russian sailors, and he's like, I deduce, this is a locked room mystery, you know, and the Russian sailors who are with him, and you can tell like they're dressed like, you know, sailors with the white and blue striped shirts, and they're kind of speaking with that sort of accent, you know.
One of them is Asunaga from the previous chapter.
I didn't actually recognize that during the sequence, but we will learn that in a bit too. And quote unquote Holmes, or the detective, says that the sailors say we should wait for the maritime police, but he says no, he'll have the reveal of the killer in less than 5 minutes, as he looks on a wardrobe with like a seal on it in Japanese, meaning like something that's like written like and pasted like on the doors, like on each door, so you couldn't have like opened it or anything, you know, without the paper falling.
It's like one of those paper talisman things.
Exactly. Yeah, pretty much. So then the chapter begins proper is the word I use, but meaning like kind of in the way you'd expect a Phoenix Wright chapter to begin. It's January 9th, I believe. And Ryunosuke is in handcuffs, and he's accused of murder of Kazuma Asogi. What?
No.
Yeah. I said last time, well, Kazuma's really cool, and I like him, so the game is probably going to make him a bad guy or kill him. So here we are.
I was banking on actually the former, but that like he was maybe going to be Edgeworth or something. But like, I was very surprised to see that nope, he's dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really just a repeat of the first game of Phoenix Wright.
Yeah.
Oh, like Mia Fey, but.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
See, I was wondering if they were going to like throw a curveball there and like have it be like, oh no, he's only, maybe he was bit by a snake that the venom paralyzed him and we think he's dead. But then it was like a whole post-mortem report, and I was like, oh no, he's actually dead.
Yeah, no, he's fucking dead.
Yeah, he's dead. Yeah, he's dead, Jim. So. What happens is we go to a flashback, and we reveal Kazuma wanted us to come with him, so that the plan was to stow away to England with him, you know, and help him kind of like achieve like this thing he wanted to do, which he won't say what it is. But now he's dead, and we're waking up as his primary murder suspect, so that plan's kind of out the window. And Susato's here. And she doesn't believe our innocence. She thinks we murdered Kazuma, you know? And we vow to avenge him. And then in one of many awesome sequences, Susato kind of does a judo flip to us in like first person, so the whole camera kind of flips and goes blurry. And she calls it a Susato takedown, and it's really funny.
And then the entire visuals is skewed. We are knocked over. She's coming in from the top because we are upside down. It's very it's very cinematic for an Ace Attorney game.
I really like Susato in this chapter because it seems like in the first chapter we just got a little bit of her, but now she's with us this whole chapter, and I like her.
Yeah, she's pretty great. I think she really comes into her own this chapter.
Yeah.
And it's tropey in a way to have like the small like the small girl kind of doing the flip, you know what I mean? Like, and kind of like physically overcoming the hero in like a comical way, that sort of thing. But I do really like it. I don't know why, like, just like maybe it's the art style, the way she looks and stuff. It's very good comedy.
I think it's because in the first chapter, she was kind of presented as this very kind of demure person. Mm-hmm. And then in this chapter, she like takes the lead and shows that she's got like power.
Yeah. No, totally. Let's see here. So basically, she wants to know why we did it. But so we have our first sort of puzzle of the chapter where we have to kind of prove our innocence with like the very little we have in our quote unquote court record, Right.
And I think right now the only thing that we have is the talisman that was on the doors of the wardrobe that we were in as kind of like a seal do not open.
We also have a student badge, which is very important.
Yeah, we have to have the badge.
Right.
Yeah. But if we had killed Kazuma, there would be no way that we could kill him, then get back in the wardrobe, and then stick the talisman back on.
Right back on the outside, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's our way of ruling that, So now we get the opportunity to investigate, which again works kind of like your typical sort of Ace Attorney game in a way, where you can get to examine everything around the room, talk to people who are in the room with you. And in a lot of like Japanese like adventure game visual novels, the person with you is kind of acting as the game narrator, which I always thought was really clever, where it's like if you look at an object rather than like a second person sort of, you see a blue cap, like usually like the other character will comment on it with you as if you're talking, it's like, hey, that's a blue cap, so.
Yep.
It's kind of like the difference between you talking to yourself and like just having someone there to converse with you, I think makes it more kind of immersive.
100% agreed. Phoenix Wright does it, Metal Gear does it, Snatcher does it. It's like I like it whenever I see it. 999 does it, so.
Yeah. Also, this chapter in general, I was wondering, as it went on, I was wondering when we would get to like the courtroom, and then it turns out no, this entire chapter it takes place entirely on this ship, and it's like a trial without a trial.
So it's funny you say that, because when we were planning out the season, and like how much to read, like I think I know I did, and I think a couple other people also looked at like this is what's this is what's coming sort of in term like non-spoiler. So like I saw this chapter was all investigation, which again I hadn't personally seen in a Phoenix Wright before, or an Ace Attorney game, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
So I was interested to see how they pulled that off, but we can examine Kazuma. We can look at Kazuma had a diary, a London diary. It's not complete, but Susato won't let us read it, And we can see that there is a vent shaft to the next cabin for some reason, and a bell cord that you can ring it and like summon someone to your cabin. There's and of course there's kind of like an outline of Kazuma's body in tape that like they put there, obviously it's not like a chalk outline, it's cruder, but you get the idea, of course. And we have this phrase in presumably Russian, but that Kazuma, I guess, wrote before he died, or is supposed to have written before he died, and neither Ryunosuke or Susato knows what it says. Just curious, anybody know what it said, or like beforehand?
No, I didn't have any idea.
Absolutely not.
No,
of course not.
But I'm pretty sure it's accurate. They don't. It actually says what they say it does.
Yeah. But then, so after you examine those things, I think specifically the diary and the lettering, but whatever, there's someone there. The person from the animation, the steampunk detective. And he's like investigating the desk. And I think he's like climbing on top of it upside down, if memory serves.
Yeah, this is a running joke because Sherlock Holmes always like appears in various places in the background doing crazy stuff, and it's also one of the things that's always funny.
His character is great.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I said it before we started recording, but I really like this interpretation of well, I guess I can't say that because it's not Sherlock Holmes
It's
at
not.
all. And I don't know why any of us thought that. That's ridiculous. This is the great detective. He's investigating the desk. I don't know if he introduces himself right away, but he decides to make a deduction about who we are, because we are obviously the culprit, and that we have left Afghanistan as a revolutionary with 16 assassination victims. And he I'm shortening this for the podcast, but it's this flowery story that he's coming up with like on the spot. And what I absolutely love is Susato buys all of it.
Right.
Now, the Afghanistan stuff is also a reference to Sherlock Holmes, by the way, to actual Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
Because that's what the very first thing in the very first Sherlock Holmes story, that's where he deduces Watson has been in Afghanistan.
Eternally topical.
I think at this point in the story, like everyone else knows who this person is, but we don't, and everyone is just very impressed by him. It's like, wow, it's the famous detective. So they just take everything he says completely at face value, even though it's entirely wrong.
Right.
And Susato certainly does, which we'll see why shortly.
And and he says, and I wrote this down too, I present my findings with a brassy certitude, and more often than not, they're right, which is kind of awesome. But basically, he's like, he's the famous detective Sherlock Holmes, which apparently, so this is a weird thing, but the Doyle estate, I think, and somebody correct me if you know already about it, you can talk about it.
I can I talk about this a little bit, because
Please.
it is in the Japanese version of this game, it's Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. They didn't change names. And yeah, the common opinion about why they did this in English is that it's because of copyright, which doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, isn't that like public domain or something?
Yeah, Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, the characters are public domain. They are trademarked. The names are trademarked, but in order to violate trademark, you have to actually use the names in the title of your game, and they don't here. The name isn't called Ace Attorney versus Sherlock Holmes. So in that way, they're fine. What is still in copyright and has been in certain various lawsuits recently are the very last few Sherlock Holmes stories. So what you can't do is use anything from those stories in your work. You can use Sherlock Holmes,
But you can't use his adventures.
So my take on it, and I'm not a lawyer, but I'm interested in copyright law, and I've read a lot about it, is that there is absolutely no problem if they left the names as is. Even if you want to protect yourself by claiming that you're a parody and and you have strange names, the parody protection doesn't require you change the names. You can leave the original names and still be a parody. And on the other hand, if you change the names, that also doesn't protect you, because copyright isn't about the exact names, it's about similarity. You can be sued for copyright if you just have a story that's very similar to an existing story. It doesn't have to have the same character names or anything.
Yep.
Hold it. So copyright can be filed criminally or civilly, as in a tort law. And the thing about tort is that, you know what? You might actually still be right, but being sued costs you money. And if you are a big money for big companies, it might even make sense to just get the lawsuit out of the way by settling. So basically, Capcom of USA might be like, I just want to avoid all this together, because criminally there's a really narrow definition of copyright that we may or may not be violating, but the Doyle estate has every right to see us in court if they think we are. And apparently the Doyle estate's pretty litigious.
Sure, but changing the names won't stop them. They will sue you if they think they have a case. They will sue you even if you don't have the Sherlock Holmes name, especially if the name is Sherlock Holmes, which is very, very close.
Also, key to the Doyle estate is that what the premise that they make for a lot of their current lawsuits is elements of the character that were introduced only in the later stories. One of the things that they've recently sued about was that the Enola Holmes Netflix series
which, by the way, has the character of Sherlock Holmes in it called Sherlock Holmes. And
Straight
that
up.
wasn't the problem.
Yeah, Henry Cavill plays Sherlock Holmes. Their problem was that he plays a more emotionally present, a more engaged emotional character. Their contention was that element of Sherlock Holmes was only introduced in later stories. He was very detached, very sort of methodical in the early stories. So that's how they got it. It wouldn't, and like as Oren says, it would not just that. If that's their case, they wouldn't care about the name.
Now, I think that they did it for a different reason. I think that in the United States, there's a history of parodic works doing this kind of like silly name changes. See Mad Magazine, the entire history of Mad Magazine. I think that's more the reason why they did it, and not because of any copyright issues. Just because it's a parodic take on the character, and it seems appropriate to have this kind of silly name attached to it.
Yeah, in this kind of presentation of him, I think it just works better to call him Sherlock Holmes instead of Sherlock Holmes, just because of how silly he is.
Yeah, I think that like the way that they interpret this character would put it. I mean, they still could be at risk for a lawsuit and risk for settling, but I think that the risk is generally very low compared to like Enola Holmes, because they definitely aren't just taking what if Sherlock Holmes were a nice guy who cared about people and respected women. They definitely take it into a much different direction that seems a lot easier to defend as far as a copyright claim.
Yeah.
So it definitely seems like they are doing it. I want to say almost to give him the impression of being an off-brand Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah. You know what? They might be protecting themselves from Sherlock Holmes fans more than they are protecting themselves from lawsuits.
Objection. And I'm presenting something from the court record in Discord, which is
which was
also...
I was about to point it out also because I know about Lupin III.
Well, then please elucidate.
Yeah, so the Sherlock Holmes and Wilson names they didn't come up with them. They were used by the Lupin III stories, where they were actually sued by, not the Doyle estate, but by Arthur Conan Doyle himself. Because, what is the name of the Lupin III author?
Maurice LeBlanc.
Yeah, so he wrote a story called Lupin III meets Sherlock Holmes, where he basically mocked the Holmes character, and Doyle sued him. So the solution was that he changed the name to Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Wilson. And that's where these names are from.
That's the second worst thing I've ever heard of a writer doing in response to being mocked, but whatever. Anyway. What was I going to say? You know, one thing, too, because we pointed out Wilson Watson before, which reminded me, too, of, like, did I mention also, like, Wilson's the name they use for House MD's, like, Watson kind of character? Well, if I didn't, I did now.
No, you did.
So
100%.
Okay. All right. Well, cool.
Are we going to get sued now by talking about this?
I think we're not on anybody's radar right now.
Yeah, I think the lawyer would be like, look, I don't think they have the money to worth being it worth. You know what I mean? Capcom, maybe, but not Visual Novel Book Club.
Shows down. We're making bank from this.
Just make sure to put Sherlock Holmes in the title of the episode.
Right. Just something together. Something else altogether, you know? Also, fun fact, by the way, too, throughout this chapter is Sherlock Holmes, is that everyone keeps thinking he might be German, like Hairlock, you know?
Yeah.
But as in HERR, like the word for like Mr. or man in German. But apparently this is sort of like a localization joke because he refers to himself in Japanese as Anno Sherlock Holmes, as in like that.
Yeah, it's a running joke throughout the game in Japanese where he introduces himself to people who don't know him. Not everyone knows him. In fact, most people don't know him, who he is. Mm-hmm. And he says, my name is, I'm Anno Sherlock Holmes. And Anno means that, and I would translate it as like the famous, like Sherlock Holmes. But people keep thinking
verified.
People keep thinking that Anno is part of the name. So there's a running joke about people thinking he's called Anno Sherlock instead of just Sherlock.
Nice.
And they had to like do various things with that in English. They don't translate it the same way always, but in Japanese it's just a very straight running joke, exactly the same every time.
And is this the point where he explains, like, yes, he is Sherlock Holmes, the fictional character, but he's the person that all of the like the stories exist in, like, canonically, and he's the person that the stories are written about. Just his best friend Wilson just writes down his stories and sells them, and so that's sort of their explanation for its canonicity.
Yeah, which is the situation in the actual Sherlock Holmes universe, I think. Or does it ever say what Watson does with his stories?
Oh no, he sells and publishes them. Yep. So it makes Holmes much more famous. And also we find out that Susato actually reads the magazine, which is Ranced, which is just a strand with the ST at the end.
That's right. I was going to say Rance magazine that Susato reads. Yeah, I think he says, like, you can read all about me in Rance. And she's like, I do.
I already do. She imports it, apparently. She apparently likes to read stories about, short stories about England and other articles about England that she gets sent over all the time.
She's very bookish. She's like always got like a book with her.
Mm-hmm.
What I like about this like initial Sherlock Holmes bit is that he explains how he got into his conclusion about Naruhodo, and they're all from the same newspaper story. He basically just repeats what he read in the story in the newspaper.
Which, and I'm going to nerd out here, is a running joke in the actual Sherlock Holmes stories, which is that he'll have all these different. So basically, the premise for Sherlock Holmes a lot of the time is that he'll make these little minute observations, and he has this encyclopedic knowledge of the circumstances in his world, right? So like he'll see somebody's cuff is frayed in a certain way and they have their elbow looks a certain thing. And he's like, oh, this person is an accountant who works at the docks because this is how, his job would always make his clothes wear in that way or some kind of thing. This certain military guy walks this way because he served in this place. And then every so often he'll make an observation and Watson will be astounded by it. And he'll be like, I read the paper before you. And that's how I know who this person is. And it's like a running joke, actually, in the stories, which is the same thing he's doing now, except he's completely wrong.
That's the best part, is he's just completely off base.
And I think the only, like, evidence he has for that is just that we're wearing all black. I think he's like, wearing all black, therefore you must be the person I read about in the newspaper.
Now, do you read, I'm kind of wondering what you think at this point. Do you read this as he's actually wrong, or he knows he's wrong, but he's doing this as kind of a bit?
I absolutely read this as genuine. He truly believes that he is a brilliant, infallible detective, and he is also a little bit of a himbo.
Because he has a lot of bits that suggest the later on.
Yeah. Well, he changes halfway through this story and stops getting things wrong and seems to know the answers, which is the only thing that's made me think that I'm not sure yet. The beginning part of the story, I was absolutely convinced it was just, this is dumb Sherlock Holmes. Now I'm sort of halfway.
Yeah, later I think it's more like suggest that he tries to encourage Naruhodo to give the real answer by giving the wrong answer first.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced of that. Because I really like it better. That, like, I feel like I was kind of on the theory that this universe's Sherlock Holmes or whatever would do the same thing, but this time around Watson or Wilson was the one who, like, helped him out, as we'll see later.
It's like an Inspector Gadget situation.
Yep. Yeah. You got it. Exactly.
So it's just that the stories are edited.
Yeah, but now that Wilson's dead, Naruhodo's got to fill that role, is what I'm getting at.
Which I don't think we ever tell him about.
Yeah, we don't.
Maybe someone should have mentioned that.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, we never tell him that. So I was waiting for that the whole episode, and then it never quite happened.
I feel like it wouldn't have changed a thing. Like he's probably that unflappable that you would tell him. And he'd just be like, well, that's too bad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I think he would care. I don't know.
And then just I like him. It's like even when we're like correcting him or course correcting him, he just completely just goes with it. Like at first I thought he was going to be like kind of the egotistical, kind of like just wrong about everything person, but like he's actually kind of likable.
Yeah. Yeah, what the newspaper says about Ryosuke is that what do you call it? He thinks that the Russian revolutionary from Afghanistan is named Villain Bolshevik, which I guess is like a Bolshevik joke as well as villain.
Yeah, it kind of like a red herring thing.
Yeah. But obviously, right away, like you see the person in there, which is going to come up again, that there's a picture of the guy who looks completely different.
Yeah, and we even say that to him. It's like, look at the picture, that looks nothing like me. And his response is, well, this villain Bolshevik is a revolutionary, so of course they can revolutionize their appearance, which is a long-winded way of saying it's a disguise.
Yeah. And then we have to look at this newspaper. He presents to us with this, and he says, you can keep this as a souvenir of my deductions. Like, he's really fucking obnoxious about it.
He also said that he later said that he gave it to you because he can't be bothered to find a trash bin.
Yeah, that's right. Which is one. Oh, that's right. There's one in the next room, but there's not one in theirs. And there's on the back of the newspaper is this article about what initially is thought to be a beautiful princess, but he translates that it's actually a ballerina. When you investigate and look at it a little further, she's a ballerina who went missing. It's Nikolina Pavlova.
That's right. Yep. And anyway, so it also turns out that Holmes has already gone. I'm just going to call him Holmes. I don't care. Holmes has already gone ahead and read Kazuma's diary.
And she doesn't, and Susato doesn't flip him.
No, she's fine with that.
Yeah, she doesn't want us to read the diary because it's like, oh, those are Kazuma's personal thoughts. Even though the guy's like dead and we're suspected of his murder. But she lets Holmes read it immediately.
And not only doesn't she flip him, she reads it for him because he can't actually read it because it's in Japanese.
Right.
That's right.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I'm very here for this bit that like she is just like kind of fangirling over Holmes and just going with whatever, and then just like even though Holmes or Naruhodo is just like I can't believe this guy, and then everybody's just like yeah whatever, it's fine. So at 1:23. Kazuma wrote that he hears a faint whistling, and then at 1:35, he sees a speckled band dangling from the vent grill. So anyway, Holmes leaves to do his own investigating outside the room, which we can't do because technically the crew is holding us prisoner. And basically, we see that there's glassware on the floor. And a brick and a streak of some kind, like a brick colored streak, Yep. So there's that. And let's see here. There's also like a chicken bone that's on the ground next to a plate, and it's from a roast chicken. And
I was going to say Kazuma doesn't like chicken apparently, which okay, because as you were about to say that Naruhodo's been literally eating leftovers, but this time he had to eat the whole chicken because Kazuma didn't want the chicken.
Yeah, and apparently dinner was just one gigantic chicken, and this leg is also comically huge.
Yeah,
but it looks like a dinosaur rather than a chicken.
This chicken was like all Monsanto feed. It was like, yeah, bulk me up.
Exactly, but Naruhodo realizes he has no real memory of that night Kazuma died, and also notices that all the books on the bookshelf are knocked over. And Susato immediately can't stand that and fixes it, because again, even though we were chided for not keeping a crime scene intact last chapter, still can't do it, so whatever. But also, all of a sudden, who should appear but Inspector Hosonaga, dressed as a crewman. And at this point, I kind of feel like he's the 19th century Jean Parmesan, if anyone knows that Arrested Development reference. But cool. I'm glad one person did anyway.
That one.
None of you watch Arrested Development. All right. Well, anyway. So Jean Parmesan's a running gag about a detective who keeps popping up in different outfits. But anyway, there's more to it. But whatever. Anyhow, so So apparently he was here as a night, as Asogi's bodyguard, you know? So I guess, like, Hosonaga just sucks at anything that's not evidence, like stealing evidence from a crime scene. But
to his credit, he didn't do anything wrong. I mean,
I guess not, you know?
Well, even with the evidence from a crime scene, he fails at everything he's assigned to do. Just sometimes he does the right thing by accident.
Yeah, he's really like, people have to stop micromanaging Hosonaga, basically.
Just let him do his thing.
You got a free range Hosonaga, god damn it.
So apparently, Minister Jugoku, which maybe I'm thinking of the wrong word, but no, isn't Jugoku the word for hell?
it definitely is.
Yeah. Okay, so was worried about Asogi's potential assassination. So we show Hosonaga the diary to show our innocence, basically. So he'll kind of like let us, go next door and try to figure out what's really going on here, since the crew assumes that we, are a murderer in the one of the people murdered somebody in the first class cabin and a stowaway. So I wrote snakes on a boat in my notes because I guess I thought that was funny, but reviewing it wasn't, so never mind.
Yeah, because we convince him that, there's something coming from the ventilator grill, and the ventilator grill connects to the next door cabin. So
right.
Obviously, like, we need to investigate the next door cabin.
Yeah, we want to get over to investigate, but obviously nobody wants to let us out of the room because we're suspected for murder. So
right.
Hosonaga kind of covers for us and allows us to leave the room and go into the other room to investigate.
He basically calls it like a matter of honor. Like, okay, look, I have failed Kazuma by allowing him to be murdered. So I will put my life on the line to let you investigate this crime scene, which is
the next best thing.
It seems a little melodramatic, but there you go.
Right.
Yeah. Also, in pointing out the ventilator to the next room, the game acknowledges that it's not a really smart idea. Like, why would you need a ventilator just to the next room?
It's like, that's not going to get you fresh air.
No, it's not really a good explanation, which also in the original story, there's not a really good explanation. Like, I don't know why you would need a ventilator into the next room in a just normal house.
in the original story, it was part of the father's plan. He built the ventilators in order to murder his stepdaughter sometime in the future.
Now that Jim explained like the original story of the Speckled Band, I'm thinking back to this case, and it's like they're making fun of it.
Oh, they absolutely are. They absolutely are. Yep.
Yeah, this case gets a lot better.
Yeah, there's definitely more stuff later.
Yeah, but before we get to the other room, we actually go into the hallway to meet one of my favorite characters.
Beef Stroganoff.
Yeah.
The Russian sailor. Beef Stroganoff. Oh, it's BIF.
Called in Japanese Meatloaf Stroganoff.
Aww.
And he's this big burly guy with this kind of stone face, and he's the guard we're apparently in the first class area, and he's there in the hallway to make sure, report in his book everything that happens to make sure nothing happens.
Worth mentioning, it comes up later, his face is kind of striped, almost like tan lines across his face.
I wondered what that was, and it's like, because it's these like faint lines across his face. It's like, I wonder, they almost look like scars to me.
It's like, did he fall asleep like in front of like some blinds, and so we got this like striated tan?
Yeah, it does come up later in a way that's awesome.
Yes, but let's see. Next door, we know that someone named Roylott Grimesby is staying, right? And let's see what else is there. One thing that I should also say that, like, at one point, Stroganoff leaves, but says, and he has like a lot of weird, like, Russian sort of idioms that I don't know if they're true or not. But he says, like, okay, like you'll escape when the lobster whistles on the top of the mountain, which is ostensibly when pigs fly, meaning when pigs fly.
I think that's a real idiom.
I've heard of Russian idioms, and they're like kind of like funny and odd like that, so I can totally believe it,
If they're anything like Russian memes, then yes, they're very funny and odd.
I think an infamous one is like, I need that, like I need teeth in my asshole, and
That's an awesome one.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the short story it's from is not so. But I digress. Anyhow, no, it's fine.
I have no mouth and I must scream.
It's a gross one from
almost too many mouths.
So basically, all of a sudden, Holmes is there, and oh
yeah, we should say that we kind of came into the room because we heard a woman scream.
Oh, well, yeah, that's right. So we knock on the door, nobody answers, but then there's a woman screaming, and then Holmes is there, and he like kind of does this boxing sort of stance because he wants to knock down the door, but he says, "What pray can I kick?" But the door is unlocked, so he's like, "Well,
yeah, so we can't bust it open."
Yeah,
sad.
which is I'm sorry for Sherlock Holmes, or whatever. So anyway, we go in, and there's this Russian man with a big beard, obviously in disguise, I'll say. He's a big beard. He's got one of those big furry hats and like glasses, and this is, and then we go in and Holmes says he's hiding something. And do you know the most effective weapon to use against a Russian hiding a secret? Now, I said vodka, but he said the truth. So the truth. So basically, Holmes deduces that Roylott must be a villain. And he's in the middle of committing a crime, and he's like, "You are about to witness my great deduction." And I wrote in my notes, "Oh my God, the great deduction." And I also learned the French term coup d'œil, which is a glance that takes in a comprehensive view, which again will come into play in a moment. But basically, we're now treated to a wholly new gameplay element.
What do they call this?
The great deduction.
Okay.
And it says the game's afoot, and the word deduction is flashing in the upper left, just like investigation or like testimony, happens in Phoenix Wright. But in this, Holmes, this is awesome. I don't know if anyone else wants to take a crack at explaining what this is.
So imagine if this was like a play, right? This is like the dramatic point of a play where it's like there's spotlights and the person being kind of almost interrogated is under the spotlight, and Sherlock Holmes is kind of like dancing around and making these grand gestures and explaining, his deductions and observations. And half of them are right and half of them are wrong because the person in question kind of reacts in like an expected way when the deduction is right, but then they kind of act confused when the deduction is wrong. And by the end of Sherlock's deduction, we've come to the wrong, conclusion. And Susato, it's kind of our job to course correct him. So then we take part in the deduction and kind of just when Sherlock Holmes says something wrong, we like change his words so that it's like the right thing.
Yeah, it's so basically what happens is like there's two topics that the deductions divide up into, and one is like what's the crime, and then who is this person, and he has like some wackadoodle answer, and then like there's certain keywords that you can change with like multiple choice answers or court record stuff, and changing it turns it into the right thing, and then basically when it shows Holmes's conclusion it gets crossed out and then the real one's put in.
Yeah.
And it starts out with the game is afoot, and if you get it right it says elementary, and it's kind of great.
Yeah, so this it kind of incorporates the kind of spinning evidence around to take a closer look at it, because it's interesting the way the game frames it, because there's like the static camera view where we're zooming into what kind of Sherlock Holmes sees, but then when we have the chance to course correct, we can spin the kind of environment and the character around and see something that Sherlock Holmes couldn't have seen. And in this case, one of them is that on the back of the person, there's like these long, flowing golden locks underneath like the black disguise hair.
The first thing that we accuse this person of is this person is actually villain Bolshevik, and the crime they've committed is kidnapping the ballerina.
Right, because they've got this case on like a stool and it like moves occasionally. So it's okay, you're kidnapping that person and they're in the suitcase.
Also, the case is like 2 foot wide by a foot high. Like, it's extremely small.
Yeah, like, no way.
Ballerinas are also extremely small, so it makes perfect sense.
I think that's how Holmes even defends it, right? But because we also point out like this Roylott here does not look like Villain.
I mean, he looks similar, I mean, more similar than we did, but it's still clearly not him.
Right. You're closer, but still no cigar.
It's like a Mario Wario thing.
Yeah. So we figure out basically that this is actually the ballerina, Nicolette Pavlova, and she's cutting her hair. And her real crime is when we look at the tiara on her desk, which again, we have to like kind of rotate around to see.
Yeah.
And we say that she's stolen. She said actually it was a gift from the Earl of Prussia. And she has a pet in her bag. Her pet's in her bag, her friend, but she won't tell us what the pet is. And we can present the diary to her to ask her basically about the faint whistling that Kazuma heard the night before and the speckled band,
Which he thought was a snake that had... No, I guess we didn't get that part yet.
Yeah, an intelligent reader might think, oh, they gave us this whole story at the beginning about the speckled band. I bet her pet is a snake.
Uh-huh.
You get to think about that, get to chew on that for a moment.
Right. I wasn't sure if this was entirely like a Sherlock Holmes story at the beginning. I figured it was, so I'm like, I guess this is the same thing, and this is how they're introducing it. But whatever. She seems like put off when we present this, but she won't tell us more. And then the door knocks, and it's Biff, and the captain wants to talk to Roy a lot, and he threatens to throw us out, and we leave. Pavlova like redresses up in the disguise again,
Yeah, I like how like her entire, when she puts on the disguise, her entire body shape changes to that of Beth.
There's a lot of padding on the inside of the trench coat she's got on.
Exactly. So Hosanaga's here. He's all beaten up, but he knows exactly who Pavlova is immediately because he's a huge ballet fan. Anyway, so basically the captain roughed him up for letting Naruhodo out of his room to like investigate and everything, Basically, though, they've found, I think there's like a doctor on board, more or less, who gives kind of like an autopsy. And the autopsy is that it's damage to the cervical vertebrae is what killed Kazuma. So he broke his neck.
Instantly.
Yeah, and this is my favorite thing in any Ace Attorney game where you read the the autopsy report and it says died instantly.
Yep.
Which you may realize is a problem because it started with this whole having written a dying message about the wardrobe.
Yeah.
I think I've solved this exact same puzzle in like not just Ace Attorney games but other detective games. The region.
Yeah, it's died instantly and had a watch that stopped immediately their moment of death are my two favorite tropes in mysteries. I'm glad to see one of them. Maybe we'll see the other.
Locked room too. We've seen a couple of times, but
that's true.
Let's see here. So apparently he ran into Holmes, who I'm gonna mix them up as I go. But,
yeah, now I'm gonna do that too.
I think everybody knows what we're talking about. If we're saying Holmes, we're saying Sholmes. It's all the same.
Yeah, you all get the idea. But what is it? So, basically, he said, apparently Holmes said, it's shoe polish and like left in a hurry. Excuse me. About the brick colored mark. And they realized the brick coloring kind of matches Kazuma's shoes. Also, Hosonaga mentions his head is throbbing, like got a really bad headache. And Naruhodo says, now that you mention it, my head hurts a lot too. Also throbbing. So Stroganoff's gone when we go outside for some reason. So we can go back to Pavlova's cabin without her. And the books are toppled like ours were. And this time the case is open. So and again, which I'm like, don't do it. But Susato, of course, has to fix the books, which I'm like, but now they're going to know you were in here. But she had to write the books and the statue on the bookcase. So whatever. Let's see here. Anyway, I didn't notice this the first time, but I had to go back out and Holmes is there again. This time, looking at the ship's log and singing to himself about how
great he is.
He's a great detective.
Yeah, you have to scroll the screen. They don't show you the screen where he's actually at the beginning, but you can find him before you enter the room.
Yeah. So the way that you move around these kind of scenes is it's almost like you've got the whole area available to you, but you like press left and right to scroll. And it's like, there have been a couple times where it just made me laugh because I'm in the hallway and I know, okay, I'm supposed to find something here, and you just scroll left and he's just there. He's just,
and always in some ridiculous pose.
yeah. So he's like hunched over with the book, just singing. It's like,
he's always on something too. He's never like on the ground. He's always like crawling up on like hooks or like on top of a table or something.
there, yeah.
Waiting for him to be hanging upside down like a bat.
It's awesome. And we surprise him so he gets into his like his old timey boxing stance where you kind of like go back and forth and rotate your hands, you know, without like
put him up, put your deuce up.
Fisticuffs.
He did do boxing, right? The actual Sherlock Holmes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That's part of his character, yep.
Because that's like an interesting sort of criticism about the Robert Downey Jr. or Guy Ritchie, I should say, like Sherlock Holmes movies, because he fights in them and there's like action scenes, but that was a thing in the books, right? Yeah, or the stories, that he actually did fight. So we tend to think of him as a big nerd, and I guess he still is. But
emphasis on big.
Right. So anyway, let's see. So he's noticed, and I think we noticed this too, that normally the logs, there's a ship log out here, which is like on display, and usually it's written every half hour, like nothing to report. But all of a sudden around 2:30 a.m., there's no records of anything, which is odd. So then if you go back into the room and you've examined everything you need to examine in Pavlov's room, all of a sudden somebody says, "Vessel spotted," and the ship starts to tilt, as does the screen. And, everything like gets knocked over on the bookcase, and the bolt closes on Pavlova's room, so it locks, even though neither Susato nor Naruhodo touched the lock, Yeah.
And it's very emphasized too. Like, I'm pretty sure everybody figured this out immediately. As soon as you see the door lock, you're like, oh, wait a second. This is what the game's showing us right now.
Right.
And just in case you didn't, also all of the books and the statues fall over in the exact way that they were when we originally found the scene.
Yeah.
So when I kind of still thought that this was like a snake thing happening, I thought that like the snake just liked books for whatever reason. So when he came into the like room, he just mess up the books and then go back. And I thought that was the link.
But what are you talking about? What kind of horrible detective are you? The snakes can't read.
Well, I'm not saying that they could read. I just said that they liked the books.
Oh, okay.
They feel nice.
Yeah.
All right. Sure. Oh, boy. Glad you're not defending Naruhodo. No, I'm kidding. But anyway. So Hosonaga starts banging on the door because we're locked in now, And then we kind of go back, and Beef Stroganoff comes in, so does Pavlova, and she's like, get out. And then, like, Stroganoff's like, trespassing and stowing away and murder, like, And we're like, we didn't do anything. And then he says something which I wrote down because I didn't really get it, which is, if Vixen promises not to steal chicken, do you believe? Which that totally went over my head, truthfully. So I'm
Vixens are female foxes.
Right. No, I guess like is Naruhodo the Vixen here?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess. Yeah. He's just like, I don't trust anything you're saying.
Well, yeah. In that case, if the fox promises not to steal a chicken, then you don't trust the fox because that's what foxes do.
Yeah, it's letting the fox run the hen house.
I see.
That's not quite a phrase. That's almost a phrase.
It should be, though.
Seems like it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's close. It's good.
Y'all are letting the fox run this hen house.
Right.
The fox guarding the hen house. That's what it is.
Yep.
So we're about to be thrown into a cell because I guess there is a brig and we've never mentioned it till now. But we need to try to convince someone. We need someone's help to convince everybody that we didn't do it, or we didn't do anything. And who do we look over, and Sherlock Holmes
We look over to the left.
Yeah.
And he's just hanging on the wall.
Coat hooks.
Not even like in a subtle way or like a ninja way. He's just like hanging on the way like a kid would if he figured out like it supported his weight, but whatever.
Also, there's no evidence over there. I don't know what he's looking for. He's just hanging on the coat hooks.
Well, he's also wearing the tiara.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
He says that he was hanging on the hooks because he wanted to see if the hooks, those smug hooks, could handle the weight of, I don't know, something about the tiara.
Yeah, it's a mess. That's Sherlock Holmes. Or, yeah. It's so basically, we're like, please help us. Like, I don't know, you know, and he's like, okay, hold on. I'm going to tell everybody what's going on here. And he does, his deduction that basically, you know, and this is where I guess we get into the speckled band, that Pavlova killed Kazuma. She has her pet is a snake.
So he finds the actual snake first.
Oh, that's right. Okay. And then it jumps on Stroganoff's head.
Yeah.
He says, I figured it all out, but let me show you the culprit, and puts on these glasses, and then a snake appears. A huge snake.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And it like jumps on Stroganoff's head and like kind of tightens. He can't really speak with it. Like it's muffling his voice, you know.
Yeah.
And it's very funny. And so then the great deduction begins, in which he says this is that obviously the snake is Pavlova's pet, and he bit and poisoned Kazuma by climbing through the vent. She used a whistle to call him back she like listened for, you know, if she didn't hear Kazuma moving around, she would whistle to call the snake back. She must have trained it using milk, hence this empty saucer that's on the ground in her room.
Oh, there was one thing that you forgot, though. Before all that deduction starts, they point out that it can't be the speckled band because this snake isn't speckled. It's striped.
It's striped. So actually, I was testing you, first of all, because I think you're going to be a great lawyer, but you just need more confidence. But no. So what happens, though, is...
So the first part of the great deduction is that the snake shed its skin, and it was spotted before.
And it's also a rare type of snake that changes its pattern every time it does that.
But I think what's really great, too, is everybody buys this deduction, which, like, technically exonerates Naruhodo, you know? So, like, Hosonaga buys into it. I'm not sure what Stroganoff's, you know, thing in it, but, like, Susato actually goes, well, wait a sec, which kind of screws us. You know?
The rest of the deduction is basically what happens in the actual Sherlock Holmes story.
Yes.
Like she trained the snake to go down the cord, and then she called it back with whistling, and she had a plate of milk that she used to train it.
Yeah, and Susato points out basically what are the plot holes in the story.
Yeah, here's why I really like this version of Sherlock Holmes, is that, for one, he's just so it's like he has a superpower, that he's just so extra that no matter what he says, everyone just buys it because he says it so confidently. And secondly, like, he's not useless. Like, he gets stuff wrong, but he's not useless. He actually does have some useful kind of like observational powers where he notices small things that we don't, but he just comes to the wrong deduction.
Yeah, he gets all the way there, but he can't get quite across the finish line, and he needs someone else to do that.
Yeah, he's not a useless character.
I mean, in a lot of ways, you know, this is sort of the opposite of what we, the credit that we gave Naruhodo in the first case, where it's like, hey, like I don't really know anything about being a lawyer, and like this all really confusing to me, but I trust my observation. Like, I know I have a good eye. I notice details, and it almost seems like Sholmes here has the other half of that, where he's not great at observation, but he's really great at deducing information from if you give him the right observations. So it's like he's got half of it. He is genuinely good at deduction, but not great at realizing what you should or should not pay attention to.
I also like that when we correct him, he doesn't like get mad or anything, or he's not like pompous. He just kind of goes with, you know, whatever happens to be true at that time.
He's not precious about it, I think.
He immediately, like, when we point out the actual stuff that's true, he immediately, like, agrees and goes on with it.
It's like, exactly. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, as if he were the one that said it, or he knew it all along.
Well, note that it's when we do, but when other people kind of point it out, he sort of comes up with like little excuses or like ways it could still work his way. But then we have to do the course correction, which I don't know if we mentioned too. We dance with him and like join him in it, and I think Susato makes a point of like, you know, of saying like I think you just enjoy doing this, you know.
And they do a bit.
Oh yeah, and there's a running gag of whenever we do that. It's like he can magically cuff us and uncuff us, and we don't even notice.
Right.
Also, I don't know if any of you tried, but because in all of these scenes where you have to like rotate the camera and find the actual correct spot, there are so little options that they actually have unique text for every wrong choice you make. And they're pretty funny. So try those next time.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a couple and they were all very amusing.
Like if you, in the first one, when you try to figure out what the scissors are for, if you choose the hat, the Naruto says that they had a hat on so long that it fused with their beard, but they had a scratch on their head, so they had to cut off the hat to get to the scratch.
Yep. Also, the whole deduction dance, it reminds me a lot of Ghost Trick. Like, it's got that whole, like, snappy timing thing, which immediately appealed to me.
Yeah, it's a very stylish minigame, even though it is, I call them, like, mini trials.
I can't remember the name of the detective, Cabanela, in Ghost Trick, but Holmes reminds me a bit of him. He's not quite as bombastic with the dance moves, but he's got these, like, moves. He's, Paula, you said it before, but I want to use it in a different context. Holmes, what I like about this Holmes is he's very extra.
Yeah, it's like that's his power. He's so extra that everyone just can't help but believe him.
And he does do a lot of posing. He doesn't, not quite as much dancing as Cabanela, but a lot of posing.
Right.
A lot of hat flips too, like he'll snap it up and snap it down.
Yeah, and he has like duet moves with Naruhodo and stuff. It's great.
Very confident, this guy.
Yes. So let's see. So basically, course correction, we reveal this is not a snake, because snakes don't drink milk and they don't have ears, so they can't hear whistling.
And also they can't climb up rope bells because they don't have arms or legs.
Right. And Holmes mentions Holmes brings up snake charmers, but he says, I think the people doing that are actually just doing the music and charm with the snake and not vice versa. So basically, course correction reveals, no. This is Pavlova's pet is a cat, not a snake. That's the cat. And rather than poison because of the, boar dying instantly, blah, blah, blah. Actually, Kazuma tripped over the cat and died.
The speckled band was a cat toy that she tried dangling down the vent to get the cat to come back.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So this part, I actually laughed a lot at this part because once they figure out that it's not her pet, they have to figure out, whose pet is it? It's Beef Stroganoff's pet, and they reveal this by like the snake squeezing his head, but he's also like has his hand to the side petting it, and this thing is just squeezing his face, and that's when I realized, oh, that's what those marks are. It's this snake does this a lot apparently, and it clearly doesn't like him.
Yep. So the snake's name is Pirozko, which I don't know if it's a joke or something. Pirohzko, which is how the
Pirozko.
At least the English version spells it. Pirozko.
I think it might just be like a cutesy Russian thing.
It might even be like snake in Russian.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you know what? I have a good research tool right here.
We are going to get to the bottom of every goddamn name in this game, and you all can't stop us.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's not.
Yes, because they did change I don't remember what the snake's name was in Japanese, but they did change the cat's name.
There's like buns like with filling that are called pirozki, like pierogi, I guess, in Russian. So
maybe,
it's close to that. Yeah, or at least that's the spelling I've written down. Anyhow, basically, Susato, what was I gonna say? Something's still not quite right about all this, like why is there a locked door, etc. And it's basically kind of boils down to anybody want to explain the whole thing? I don't know if we have to go through it in all the detail and everything, but like
they go to like several more variations about exactly what happened. Do you want to actually go to all of them, or just go to the final solution?
Why don't we just go to the ending one?
At this point, the outstanding questions are why does everyone have a headache, and why is there's no logs after 2 p.m. And why was the door locked? Which we take a long time to get to the idea, but obviously it's because someone hit the emergency button, that the emergency stop that makes everything tilt.
Yeah, and then inertia.
Right.
Yeah. So we know that we've gotten this whole cat thing figured out, but like there's still some details that don't make sense if that's the entire story.
Right. So the first iteration we have of this is that the cat kind of went through the ventilation grate, and the owner tried to get it back out by waving the snake toy around, and that didn't work. And then it's kind of implied that Kazuma just tripped over the cat, maybe while the ship was already swaying and then fell and broke his neck. Which, the details that don't make sense, if that's the case, is why there's half the glass cat bell there and it doesn't explain the dying message.
Yeah.
Right.
Because, we find the other, so that the glass, like, it looked like glassware next to, like, a brown stain in Kazuma's room. We find the other half of that glass bell in her trash can, and we see that this was a cat, like, it was a cat's bell. So we know it came from the cat, but yeah, half of it somehow got from Kazuma's room to Nicolina's room.
Right. So basically, what more or less happens is that the Russian sailors, like, they all know Pavlova, and they love her, and they want to help her, and she wants to get out of, being a belly.
Let's maybe do get, like, the second stage, because the first, after we point all of that out, they do come up with the story that everything happened like we said, but then Nicolina went to the next cabin to get her cat, and she saw through the door that Asogi was dead, and then she went to Biff to help her, and that's when they made up the fake dying message, and he pushed the alarm button.
Yep. But again, that what we find out is that isn't true, because what the observation is that the Kazuma's on the ground and one of his hands is in a fist. And why would you be in a fist when you fell that way? Like, it's not just in a fist. It looks like the kind of fist you make when you grab something.
Yeah, tightly clenched, because usually when you fall, the instinct is to open palms flat to catch yourself.
Yep.
Right. But he's got, as Holmes pointed out, an earring, basically, which looks like it's from the Capcom game Strider, I might add, in his fist. And if you, like, look around at Pavlova with, like, this whole, like, scene, like, view thing, you can see she's got one earring on one ear that looks like the pair. So obviously she was with Kazuma when he tripped and died. And in fact, he tried to grab for her to, like, as he was falling. So then it's revealed that, the crew sneaks her on board. They basically drug the passengers so that no one will, like, they're able to do it in the dead of night by, like, drugging all the food, and then, she's on board, stowed away, disguised as Royalot, but then the cat disappears. I don't know if we ever get the cat's name. Her cat disappears.
Yeah, it's in English, it's Darka. Cat's name?
Oh, Darka, that's right. Yeah, you're right.
It's a little black cat.
In Japanese, it's Kuropoi. And I think the names imply that, like, they say it's a female cat in English, but I think it's implied it's a male cat in Japanese, which is weird.
Well, anyway, I guess it goes over to Kazuma's room, like, it goes through the vents, she goes over to Kazuma because she's not supposed to have pets on there, so she's like, please don't tell anybody. Oh, and he says something about his friend, the inspector, like, checking with her. She's like, no, I'm not supposed to be on board here, or whatever,
It's like, she knocks on the door, and first he thinks that the inspector coming to visit. So before he opens the door, he says, Inspector, what are you doing here? And then he opens it, and it's her instead.
Yeah. So she tells him what's going on. He promises not to tell, I think, but then he mentions, like, I just want to consult with someone, and reaches for the wardrobe. She thinks he's reaching for the bell cord to summon someone to give her away or get his inspector friend to come. So I think she, like, panics and pushes him, but then he trips over Darka and actually falls. So she is, like, directly responsible for his death. And then she tells Biff about it after the fact, and he helps cover it up by writing the word wardrobe in Russian in ink.
Yeah, and at one point before, we had found ink stains on Biff.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, on his, like, back somehow.
Yeah, because, like, he always stands, like, with his hands behind his back in that, very military fashion, so.
I like the kind of camera tricks that this game plays, like stuff that would be very obvious to anybody, except you've just got to be able to turn the camera around.
Yeah, except for the players of an Ace Attorney game where people are always standing, perfectly in front of you.
Right. So, that's basically it, and we're kind of, it's kind of revealed, like, okay, so this is everything that happened, etc. Basically, we have our kind of, like, debrief epilogue with Hosonaga after the fact, which is basically like she's agreed to turn herself in to the British police when we get there, and Biff too. Me too, that is. No, Beef also agrees to do that. So
yeah, but Holmes can apparently arrange that he won't be returned to Russia because he has connections with the immigration.
Yeah. So then what happens is, trying to think here, sorry. And then like basically Hosonaga is, because we're a stowaway and stuff, is going to return us to Japan, which, it's like a shame, nothing we can really do about it. But then Holmes has the idea of, wait, there's a grant for a lawyer and an assistant. We got 40 days to London. Why don't you become a lawyer? So Hosonaga is like, I don't know, like 40 days to be a lawyer. And Naruhodo's like, I'm going to cram like I never crammed before. And then like we have a montage from Ron Dangerfield's back to school. And that's the end of chapter 2. No. So chapter 2 ends with the promise that we are going to be the new lawyer and avenge Kazuma by like doing the thing that he set out to do when he hit London. And we still don't know what that is.
Whatever that is.
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
We also learned the name of Kazuma's sword. Katana.
Yeah, Karma.
It's Karuma, which in the Japanese version, it's spelled the exact same way that the guy they translated to Von Karma in English is spelled.
No shit.
And his daughter.
So the sword is Karma's ancestor.
It's not a standard spelling. It's a very specific spelling. It's very obvious that it's the exact same name.
Oh, wow.
That's interesting.
It is interesting.
Von Karma, for the record, I think is the Manfred von Karma is still my favorite character in all of Ace Attorney. But anyway,
really not his daughter.
So in the English version, they give her a really. Are you being sarcastic? Or?
No, I really like.
No.
I know her more as May Karuma, but Franziska von Karma in English.
Franziska von Karma has an awesome design. I really do like the whip. No, it is sexual. No, I'm kidding. But she has a really annoying localization thing where she really relies on the word fool. Like, you foolish fool with your foolish... And it's like, it's outright annoying, Like, no two ways about it. So, if they got rid of that, I actually think her character would be improved, like, 200%. She's, like, kind of a pain in the ass.
I don't remember that, but I do remember that I really did like her. One of my favorite characters when I played those games. She also appears later in the Edgeworth games.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think she's substantially more charming in the Edgeworth games, maybe just because, she's sort of on her side. But she does, she still has the vocal affect because, you can't just get rid of that.
I just like that she's like the daughter of the big bad that we fought in the previous game.
Yeah. I think he's just such a great villain, though. Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day.
But anyway, the connection with the katana and the name is a connection that is there and is meant for you to recognize, and that's kind of lost in the localization.
Yeah, it's completely obfuscated in English. I didn't even realize, and this might be because I am dumb, but I didn't realize that it was even that it was supposed to be karma.
And it's also. It makes less sense because in English, Von Karma is from Germany. No connection at all.
Oh, he's not from Germany in the...
Everyone is Japanese in the Japanese version. There are no international cast in Japanese. They're all Japanese.
Oh. Jeez. Huh. Well, how about that?
We're learning so much.
Oh, I learned something else.
So yeah, this case ends on a real downer.
Yep. It does. Yeah. It turned out to just be an accident, and everyone's all sad and everything.
Like it was completely senseless.
Yeah.
Can I point a plot hole here?
Sure.
I don't think we can stop you.
So this game already has the several languages the characters speak as plot points. There are Japanese characters speak Japanese, and there are the English served as like a universal language when. And there's Russian in this chapter.
Sure.
And the reason she pushed Kazuma was that she heard him mention his friend the inspector.
Oh.
But if the inspector came to the door, surely he would have said it in Japanese and not in English.
That's true, yep.
Then how did she understand that?
Yeah, that's true. I was thinking the same thing when it happened. I was like, oh, wait, but... Maybe they conversed in English when they were on the boat, but there isn't a good explanation.
Why would they? There's no good reason for that.
There's also the joke you're talking about the like, Anno Sherlock, which only makes sense if Sherlock Holmes himself is speaking Japanese to us.
Yes.
And to everyone on the boat, which if theoretically you're using English as a common language.
Yeah, but that's like a regular thing that happens every time you do this thing. So obviously in Japanese, everything in the game is in Japanese, even when the characters are speaking English. But they still have wordplay in Japanese and Japanese idioms, and you can't really avoid that. But yeah, but they do actually like mention that the characters are speaking different languages in the game at several points, and it's an actual plot point at several points. So it makes it's weird that like that kind of breaks this one.
Yeah, I think it happens a couple times with the Biff Stroganoff, where like he'll kind of like the game pauses as they're trying to, when he's not actually saying yes or no. There's actual like hesitation in the dialogue in those things, and like clearly they're using different languages. So, I guess it wouldn't hold true for everything.
One thing that they changed that I didn't like very much is that Nikolina Pavlova in the Japanese version, her speech patterns are very obviously meant to show that she doesn't speak English very well. She speaks in very clipped sentences, doesn't say a lot of complicated words. And they kind of completely didn't do I think they were trying to stay away from the stereotypical way that like Russian-speaking English are usually portrayed in English. Because they didn't have that at all, and they could easily have done that. And I think they should have, because it is stereotypical, but there's a reason Japanese, Russian people and Japanese people like don't use the definite article or articles in general. That's because Russian doesn't have them and Japanese doesn't have articles. So obviously Russian people who only speak rudimentary English make those mistakes. And it sounds typical, but I think they could have used it here and would have made the dialogue better. Because they speak very, very fluent English, all of the Russian people here, and the Japanese people.
I think like beef, whatever, comes across all right, just because he uses those idioms, and like very occasionally he does like da and yet, so you kind of get that.
And it's even written in Cyrillic, which
that's
is
true,
just very cute.
Just for Nikomina specifically, they actually they worked very hard in Japanese to make it sound like she didn't have good control of the language that she was speaking, and they kind of like removed that completely in English.
Oh yeah, that's right. Like when we first talked to her, she used like the word disgusted instead of disguised.
But that's it, and then they abandon it completely.
That's it, and then she just speaks like completely fluent English, full sentences, difficult words.
I thought that was a typo when they said disgusted. See, though, that's what happens when you don't commit to the bit.
Yeah, it is.
You've got to commit.
You got to commit to the bit. So, I accidentally saw like the next, like one word of the next part. I'm not sure what's going to happen next.
Well, I personally, for one, can't wait to see which life gets ruined next by being just adjacent to Naruhodo.
It's just not his fault, though.
Is it?
This seriously is, though. This is the most, I think this is the most tragic case of any Ace Attorney game. Like, I was crying. Yeah. It's really sad. Our friend died for no reason.
Kazuma was inconvenienced in the first case by being, friends with Naruhodo, and now he's just dead because he was friends with Naruhodo. So I can't wait to see where they take this next. Can't wait to find out what happens to Susato.
It's not just Kazuma, it's also like the poor Russian girl that tried to escape and now...
Yeah, everybody is worse off for being friends with Naruhodo.
Hold on. It's not his fault, though. You know what I mean? To be fair, Kazuma didn't have to be like, I should get the opinion of someone else before I figure out, should I reveal to everyone that this poor Russian girl, just make the fucking decision on your own, my dude.
It's not a hard one either. Just be like, yeah, sure, I'll keep your secret. What the hell is it going to cost me?
I know. Hold on, I gotta call the other members of Visual Novel Book Club before I know about, like, commit to this one. Like, get out of here, Kazuma.
I mean, at that point, the question, it's not just keeping her secret about the cat. It's keeping her secret because he also instantly recognizes her as the ballerina. So, like, it's keeping her secret about her running away from... He's like, oh, I thought you were actively on tour in Russia. This is a thing that I keep up with.
Also, like, why would he rat her out? Like, what does he think that's a good thing? Like, it's not like he knows she committed a crime and he's like, well, I don't know if I should keep your secret because you committed a crime. He's like, oh, you're fleeing your country. I should report this.
Yeah, right? Otherwise, I'm not getting ballet, you know? But, like... The other weird thing kind of about it too, right, is like what was supposed to happen is that she panics, right? She pushes him. Maybe he knocks into the wardrobe and then she's like, oh, please don't pull the cord. He goes, oh, I'm not. I got a stowaway here. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of weird in general, right? Like, the normal scenario.
Yeah, why would he give her ammunition? Why would he let her know his secrets? No, just be like, sure, and then, like, keep his own secret.
Maybe it was a trust exercise. Maybe he was trying to show that he was a trustworthy person by being like, oh, you've had to tell me so much here. Here's my secret as I keep a man in my wardrobe. You're
not the only one with secrets. And then she's going to be like, what the?
Yeah, I've got dirt on you. Now you've got dirt on me.
And then she's like, well, no, now I'm going to the cops because you have a fucking dude sleeping, like, drugged in your wardrobe, actually.
I mean, that's a million times worse than what I did.
Like, that's how it would play out, too. He'd open the door, there'd just be this unconscious man. Be like, oh, look at this, huh? Come on. We're equal, right? What? We're equal, though.
No, we're not. No, absolutely not. What are you doing?
We're the same, you and me.
We're not so different, you and I.
Much like you are fleeing from your country, I have this young Japanese man unconscious in my wardrobe.
A student like me. What are you looking at my sword for? It's my lawyer sword. Like, you don't have lawyer swords in Russia, I guess?
You don't have unconscious men in your wardrobe? Come on, we all do it.
I know how this looks, but there's a perfectly valid explanation. And my friend, the detective.
Wake up, buddy, wake up. Normally he's awake. I don't know why he's not waking up.
Yeah, I don't know.
This is so weird. I don't know what to tell you, actually. All right, listen, I'm definitely not telling anybody about the ballet. I think you owe me a secret now. You know, one other funny thing that happened, which I read, was one of Holmes's other things he said is that, like, what does he say about Naruhodo's uniform? Like, that's obviously, like, the uniform of a revolutionary or something.
Everyone likes to mention how black it is. It's not just 12.
And Susato buys it, and she's like, I never knew that. Like, our uniforms happen to match revolutionary. God damn.
Yeah.
Really fun chapter.
Yeah, it was a very fun episode.
Yeah. What do we have to read to next?
The next episode is longer than this one, but it's not that much longer. So my fear is that if we cut it in two, then we'll have two very short episodes. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. So next episode is also, it's mostly trial. There's a very short investigative like part at the beginning, but then 90% of the chapter is a trial.
I thought the next episode was shorter than the ones we had done already.
I don't know. I think it might be either the same length as this one or maybe slightly longer.
So my suggestion would be, it seems to be the pattern that there are 3 to-be-continued breaks for each of these cases.
Now, the one after that, the chapter 4 and 5 are very, very long chapters with separate investigation and court, just like in the previous game. So those are definitely, we can split in two. The next one, I'm honestly not sure. I think we should have to play it and see how long it takes you.
So let's start with, like, officially we'll say, okay, let's do the whole thing, and then maybe as the week goes on or whatever before recording, if for some reason we need to course correct on it, then we've all learned how to do it. So
there we go.
We're set.
Brilliant deduction.
Yeah. Elemensky. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Good. Thanks for listening, folks. See you next time.
Bye-bye.